In global politics, some moves are expected, often following predictable patterns and alliances that have been established over decades, while others send shockwaves across the world stage, challenging the status quo and prompting a re-evaluation of international dynamics. Today, September 30th, 2025, we witness such a moment, a pivotal point that could alter the course of international relations. African nations, long seen as navigating a careful path between global powers, are signaling a shift in their foreign policy, one that could redefine their role on the world stage. They are considering supporting the Philippines in its maritime dispute with China, a move that could have far-reaching implications for regional stability and global geopolitics. This is not just a minor diplomatic note, it is a potential earthquake in international relations, suggesting a bold new direction for African diplomacy. For decades, the narrative has been about China's growing influence in Africa, with investments and infrastructure projects that have tied the two regions closely together. Now, Africa might be using that influence to send a message back to Beijing, indicating that their partnerships are not without conditions or expectations. The conflict in the South China Sea feels geographically distant from Africa, yet the principles at stake resonate deeply with African leaders. Yet, risking this relationship suggests a powerful principle is at stake, one that transcends mere economic interests. Initial reports came from diplomatic circles at the United Nations, where discussions have been intense and closely watched by the international community. African Union representatives discussed the importance of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, emphasizing the need for a rules-based order. By framing their support around this legal principle, African nations are making a stand for a rules-based international order, asserting their commitment to international law and justice. This move is a testament to a new kind of confidence emerging from Africa, one that is driven by a younger, more assertive generation, eager to shape their continent's future. The decision African nations make could redefine alliances and challenge the balance of power, potentially leading to a new era of diplomacy and cooperation. To understand Africa's potential involvement in the South China Sea dispute, we need to first explore the roots and significance of this ongoing conflict, which has far-reaching implications beyond Asia. At its core, the South China Sea dispute is about sovereignty, resources, and the rules that govern international waters. Understanding these elements is crucial to grasping why so many nations are invested in the outcome. The South China Sea is not just a regional concern, it is a vital maritime corridor, connecting major economies and serving as a lifeline for global trade. Over one-third of the world's shipping passes through these waters each year, making it one of the busiest and most strategic sea routes on the planet. The area is also believed to be rich in oil, natural gas, and abundant fisheries, further increasing its value. Several countries, including Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, Taiwan, and the Philippines, have overlapping claims. However, China's claim is by far the most extensive and controversial. Beijing's so-called Nine-Dash Line asserts historical rights over nearly the entire sea, covering vast areas that other nations also claim as their own. This sweeping claim has led to frequent confrontations and heightened tensions in the region. The Philippines has emerged as one of the most vocal challengers to China's claims, turning to international law and diplomacy to defend its interests and sovereignty. In 2013, the Philippines took a bold step by bringing a case against China to an arbitral tribunal at The Hague, seeking a legal resolution to the dispute. In 2016, the tribunal ruled overwhelmingly in favor of the Philippines, declaring China's Nine-Dash Line invalid under international law. The decision was celebrated in Manila and by supporters of a rules-based international order. However, China rejected the ruling outright and has continued to build military installations and assert control over the disputed waters, escalating tensions with its neighbors. The Philippines, meanwhile, has sought support from regional allies and international partners, but the diplomatic landscape remains highly complex, with economic and security interests at play. Ultimately, the dispute raises fundamental questions about the power of international law and whether powerful nations can simply ignore global rules when it suits their interests. As these questions echo around the world, they have now captured the attention of leaders in Africa, who are watching closely to see how the international community responds and what lessons might apply to their own regions. Africa's position in global politics has transformed remarkably. In the 21st century, African nations speak with a unified voice, particularly through the African Union. A core principle in African diplomacy is respect for international law and national borders. This principle is deeply embedded in the African Union's charter. At the United Nations, African countries form a significant voting bloc. They advocate for the rights of smaller nations and adherence to international treaties. When African leaders look at the South China Sea, they see a reflection of their own historical struggles. They see a powerful country dismissing internationally recognized legal boundaries. Their potential support for the Philippines is about defending the international legal system. It's not just about choosing a side, it's about upholding global order. Why would African countries risk their economic relationship with China to support the Philippines? The answer lies in shared history, common values, and strategic calculation. Both Africa and the Philippines endured colonialism and fought for independence. This shared experience creates a natural sense of solidarity. African nations have a vested interest in a world where rules dictate outcomes. The 2016 arbitral ruling on the South China Sea is a critical test case for UNCLOS. Upholding the ruling is about reinforcing a global legal framework that protects every nation. By aligning with the Philippines, African countries can help create a new, multipolar world order. It's a strategic move to ensure Africa is an independent pole of influence. African support for the Philippines would likely be diplomatic and political. The African Union could issue a formal statement calling for respect of international law. Such a statement would carry immense symbolic weight. The African voting bloc in the UN could create significant diplomatic pressure on China. This isn't about winning a military battle, but about international legitimacy. Support could also involve increased cooperation in international legal bodies. African jurists and diplomats could reinforce principles underpinning the Philippine case. This diplomatic alignment could foster deeper economic and political ties between Africa and Southeast Asia. The idea of nations from different continents banding together over a shared principle is not new. The non-aligned movement during the Cold War is a powerful precedent. It brought together countries from Asia, Africa, and Latin America to assert sovereignty. They used international forums to champion causes like decolonization and nuclear disarmament. The spirit of the NAM is re-emerging in the alliance between African nations and the Philippines. Another example is the international anti-apartheid movement. Nations worldwide imposed sanctions and boycotts on South Africa, contributing to apartheid's downfall. This history provides a blueprint for action. It shows that when nations unite behind a clear principle, they can challenge entrenched power. The potential African support for the Philippines draws on this legacy of cooperation. It is a reminder that shared values can forge powerful alliances. An Africa-Philippines alignment on the South China Sea issue would dramatically alter the global geopolitical chessboard. This partnership would not just be a symbolic gesture, but a powerful statement that smaller and developing nations can shape the course of international affairs. By joining forces, Africa and the Philippines would send a clear message that their voices matter in the ongoing debate over sovereignty, maritime rights, and the future of the region. Such an alliance would introduce a new and unpredictable variable into the already tense US-China rivalry, making the global landscape even more complex and dynamic. The world would witness a shift in alliances as countries reconsider their positions and strategies in response to this unexpected coalition. For China, this would represent a significant diplomatic setback, undermining its efforts to expand influence and maintain unity among developing nations. If African nations were to side against China, it would seriously damage China's carefully crafted narrative as a champion of the global South and a leader of the developing world. This could spark debates within China about its foreign policy approach and its ability to maintain long-term partnerships. It would also demonstrate that economic leverage, no matter how substantial, does not automatically translate into unwavering political allegiance. Countries may prioritize principles, sovereignty, and shared interests over financial incentives. For the US and its allies, this development would serve as a humbling lesson. It would highlight the limitations of traditional power politics and the importance of building genuine, broad-based coalitions. The effectiveness of a coalition defending a rules-based international order would become clear, showing that unity and shared values can be more powerful than military might alone. For countries like the Philippines, this shift would provide greater diplomatic leverage. empowering them to negotiate from a position of strength and influence global discussions. The conflict would be reframed as a crucial test of the world's commitment to upholding international law and a rules-based order, rather than just a regional dispute. Ultimately, this alliance would elevate the South China Sea issue from a localized conflict to a global litmus test, challenging nations everywhere to decide where they stand on the principles that govern our world. China's leadership would find itself in a delicate position facing a unified African front. Publicly, China would downplay the significance of African statements. Privately, Beijing would launch a diplomatic offensive across Africa. Chinese ambassadors would remind African nations of the economic benefits of their partnership. They might offer new incentives or issue subtle warnings. China would try to divide the African Union, persuading key countries to soften their stance. This situation would force introspection in Beijing about the limits of checkbook diplomacy. How China reacts would determine its future relationship with Africa and its trajectory as a global power. The potential alignment of African nations with the Philippines is a profound statement about our changing world. It signifies the end of an era where global politics was dictated by a few powerful states. Africa is becoming a central player, shaping norms and holding great powers accountable. This development underscores the value of global cooperation and multilateralism. The Philippines, backed by a global chorus, is in a stronger position. This moment marks a milestone in Africa's rise as a global force. The decision to support the Philippines is about choosing international law over power. It is a declaration of Africa's diplomatic independence. Africa's voice is now crucial, promising a more balanced and cooperative future.